Hello and welcome to another edition of DIY Indie Musicians Talking Music. In this episode, it's my great pleasure to be talking with Miss Kitty. How you doing, Miss Kitty?
Hello, I'm very well. Thank you. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing just fine, thank you. So I thought we'd jump right in today. You've led such a really interesting life that we might as well talk about that because I think that that'll bear a lot on your musical influences and the way you write music, the way you play music, and why music is so important to you. So,
Fan-
so why don't we go way, way back to your first few years where you were living on a boat in the Irish Sea and talk about that a little bit.
Sure. I was I was born in Lancaster, which is a northern city, but my parents had docked in there to give birth to me. So even when I was in the womb, I was living very much at sea, and then went straight back out to sea, as far as I'm aware. And all we had on board was a banjo, I think, as far as music was concerned. I think we had a banjo and possibly a guitar. So it was very folk beginnings, a bit like a pirate. We even had a hammock. Sometimes I'd sleep in a hammock at the end of my parents' bed. So
Wow.
it was kind of wild. And my first memories are, seagulls and great expanse of sort of ocean. And so, yeah, it was very exciting and very wild, really, to a
Oh, that's
wild sort
interesting.
of place
So,
to
so,
start.
so, so basically, what you're saying is rather than lullabies, they were singing you sea shanties.
Yeah. Well, my mum's favorite song is actually "Careless Love." The old blues
Yeah.
original, and then my dad's very good trad jazz, New
Okay.
Orleans style banjo.
Hmm.
So he's singing all the sort of old. It's quite American folk, actually, African
Yeah.
American, some of it. Yeah. So
Yeah.
um,
Well, I
thankfully,
mean, and that New Orleans stuff was really like
yeah,
a melting pot of music, right?
yeah,
Because
it was
you
all,
had like a lot of the rhythms seem to have come over from West Africa,
yeah,
and there's a good also argument to be made that a lot of that guitar sound that that then sort of melded and became blues
hmm
is also from stringed instruments from sort of Western Africa.
that
So
wouldn't surprise.
it's yeah, no, but so it's quite fascinating, and then it just it sort of melded and became all of the stuff that happened in the Delta blues, which is really the birthplace of modern music. It's
Right?
everything comes from there, right?
Yeah,
No, but it's insane, from country music to rock music to soul music to R&B to
yeah.
everything
You can
comes
trace it
from
all
there.
back. Trace it all
Yeah,
back.
all within a like really small area.
Yes.
Um, so tell me a little bit. So spent your first few years as a toddler on a boat. You obviously didn't fall in the water and die at some point,
I
and,
fell in the
and then
water, but I didn't die.
you didn't die. Well, so you learned to swim immediately upon as it should be, right?
There
Sink or
we go.
swim, you swam. Good. So tell me, and then you were enlisted in your dad's Dixieland jazz band
I was, yeah, pretty soon. I
soon
get
after. Yeah.
pretty soon after, yeah. I was taught piano a bit, and then pretty
Mhm.
much as soon as I could, I took up the clarinet, and he had me in there with these old boys, and he'd just go, "We're in E flat. Um, you'll know." He'll give you a kick when it's time for you to solo, sort of thing. and, and I'd be like, "Okay," and that's really was a baptism of fire.
Yeah. But that's a great musical, like that's the best musical education you can get
Yeah,
is
live.
you get to make your mistakes while learning at the feet of people who actually know what they're doing because they've spent
Yeah,
thousands of hours playing.
that's right. And also in front of a very supportive audience as well. And
Yes.
your brain, I just remember my brain firing so quickly, like between notes. If something
Oh
sounds
yeah.
off, you've got to get to the right a note that sounds good.
Yeah,
Quick
yeah,
time.
yeah.
It's just like wow. Yeah.
Yeah,
Quite.
so a real show business upbringing. So was your dad always a professional musician?
Yeah, he
Was that
was. Yeah, ever since he was at university, yeah, he's always played. Yeah, he had a good teacher when he was young. So, but yeah, he's always run jazz band all his life.
Oh
Yeah.
no, that's no that's great. And so I'm wondering, was your mother also recruited into the band, or was she like captain of the ship and she ran everything else?
She was the captain of the ship for sure.
Okay.
And my little sisters were recruited.
Okay. Oh well. Okay. So it was sort of like, what was it? I'm just trying to think of bands. Well, I guess you'd have. Well, there's a lot of family bands, aren't there?
There are
You
the
know,
Carters,
the
what about
Carpenters, the
the
Jacksons.
Jacksons?
There's also, I'm just trying to think, the Staple Singers. That was a
Yeah,
family with a great guitarist. I mean,
sure.
whatever's the father in the band, who was the guitarist. I think he wrote most of the stuff.
I love it.
Oh, they're one of the better. Anyway,
Yeah.
it's a style of music I've found I've become more and more interested in, and it's a big inspiration for my music. Although most people would never hear it.
Right. Yeah.
If you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Because I find, I don't know about you, but when you start talking about musical influences, with myself, I find that sometimes it's the method and the approach that I look for in terms of finding, as opposed to like stealing stealing like melodic progressions or anything.
Yeah. No.
It's trying to find the feel.
That's it. Yeah, trying to find the feel, and also just looking for sort of useful tricks, in sort of how they got from that chord to that chord. Those two chords seem very far apart. Modulation or whatever. Just little tricks. And I guess Brian Wilson has taught me quite a lot from the Beach Boys in that. I've sat down and played through a few of his songs and thought, whoa.
Yeah.
Okay.
But he was in the lucky position of not having to play it.
Sure, that's
because
true.
he had the best studio musicians of the world at his beck and call, right?
Yeah, he was lucky.
Oh, he was extremely lucky, but it's also interesting. It's funny that you say, because he learned at the foot of Phil Spector, because he was a really big Phil Spector groupie, right?
Sure.
And would literally hang around the studio as a Beach Boy with all their hits, trying to get in to play on Phil Spector sessions.
Yeah.
Which is insane.
That must have been a hell of a time in music to be hanging around that studio. But yeah, amazing. Yeah. Must have learned a lot from him as well, I guess.
Yeah, and also just the people around that whole sort of constellation around Phil Spector.
Yeah,
it's like until I started getting into the whole history of it, I never understood. Like Neil Young was completely, his big one was Jack Nietzsche.
Okay.
Right. And that's who he thought was the absolute best. Now, Jack Nietzsche was Phil Spector's arranger.
Ah.
Right.
Okay.
So, yeah. And the thing is, it makes a lot of sense. And when you look at a lot of like Neil Young's solo stuff, where he, like on those early records where he got a little bit more adventurous musically.
Yeah.
And had orchestration. That's all with Jack Nietzsche that he was doing.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's just, it was just a different approach. And if anything, it's funny, like with Brian Wilson, the one thing that I found and I used and I heard about just from, sort of descriptions of some of the stuff he was doing, is he like Phil Spector, he liked to layer instruments on top of each other, playing the same thing.
Oh, cool.
To get both a thicker sound, so the whole Phil Spector wall of sound,
sure,
but also to get different sounds.
That's
right.
Cool.
Because you get these harmonics that start happening when like a guitar and a mandolin are playing exactly the same thing, and everyone's, well, what's that guitar? How did you get that tone? Well, you didn't get that tone because it was two instruments doing it, right? Or three instruments or five instruments mattering on resources. And these days, I mean, that's one of the wonderful things that we have in the studio, because if you want to have 20 tracks doing that, and you're talented enough that you can mix it down, so it doesn't sound like sludge, you can get interesting things that you're not just going to get playing around with knobs and buttons.
Definitely.
Yeah,
that's really cool.
Yeah,
but interesting. Yeah.
So what would you say are your biggest musical influences? Like what are the first ones you like when you first started write? When do we step back? When did you start writing songs? When was the first song you wrote?
I was 12 when I first wrote. When I sat down to actually write a pop song, I think I used to sort of constantly improvise, like singing about what was around me. But when I first sat down to actually write a song, rather than just singing nonsense, I was 12. And then, that was, I just grabbed, we had an acoustic guitar in the house, and I just kind of, E minor, D, and C or something.
Well, it's, hey, listen, people have made careers of that.
Yeah, exactly.
So
there's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with it.
No, there's absolutely nothing. Yeah. There's a reason why they choose those chords, right?
Yeah, they work. Yeah. So I was about 12.
Yeah. And have you found any of those songs, like did any of those early songs make it onto your first record? Was there anything that you went back to?
There's the earliest song on the record is Butterflies, and that goes back to when I was 18.
Yeah, so that was, I mean, what, a year and a half, 2 years ago?
Exactly right. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm really good at guessing people's ages.
You're spot on there. Spot on.
No, but because the thing is that I also find really interesting is there's you hear even back with the Beatles, where some of their later albums there were songs on it that they'd written the beginning of their career.
Right.
You know, that they dusted off, and it's like, oh wow, that really sounded good, because oftentimes, I don't know about you, but oftentimes when you finish something, it's just like it's the bastard child. You just hate the thing, and you really need time and distance to realize whether or not you're being fair, or it's just something about it that happened at the time got associated with it, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of my very early songs, they were just shit. They were just terrible. And occasionally some of the catchier lines from them come back to me, but I haven't looked at anything from when I was a teenager. That was really learning the craft, and it took a little while.
Oh no, and you can only learn by doing, right? You can only learn by failing.
Good. Yeah, exactly right. And I think you have to get through a certain amount of sort of sludgy rubbish to get to where you want to be. It's important. You shouldn't hold back from writing the crap. It needs to come out.
No, that's you're completely right there. So I'm just trying to think. So when you decided, I'm guessing that you decided to pursue music seriously when you dropped out of school. Would that be correct, or was that the plan B that got implemented after plan A, which was sort of not liking school, which I think most people fall into that.
Yeah. I mean, that was a crazy time. I'd moved around a lot, so came to take we have like the exams, when you leave school, and because I'd moved around so much, there was just no way I was going to pass them, and I knew it, and I didn't have time to study for them. And it was also quite chaotic upbringing, even though it was very nomadic and cool. It was very chaotic. Yeah. And so I just knew I was never gonna get these exams, and I just wanted a job. So my plan was actually just to leave and then just get a job. I was very bored. And then so it was plan B really was, I had to really think about what it was I wanted to do, but I call those my lost years after I left school, because all sorts of things happened. A lot of it went up in smoke, shall we say.
Yeah, well, listen, at least you saw yourself through to the other side of it, which is fantastic. And the other thing, you had a big advantage on a lot of other people in the sense that you had already had a good musical education
Yeah.
and background. So, it would be questionable whether or not having continued and going into higher ed in music or something like that would have been very beneficial for you.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Because you don't, you know what I mean? When you're playing in jazz bands
Yeah.
as like a young, like a preteen type thing,
Yeah.
you by the time you're in your late teens, you probably have seen a lot and have a bigger and a better understanding of music, although you might not know all the technical terms
Yeah, that's
than
right.
half of the grads from a music, academy.
Yeah, it's a very kind of unorthodox sort of approach, really, going straight into it like that, rather than having the formal training that everyone goes through. It makes you a different kind of musician too.
Well, the formal training makes you the same kind of musician.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's the whole point of it, is the uniformity, right?
Yeah.
So that you can play in something like an orchestra that demands that.
Yeah.
Right? Because an orchestra basically it has to be a well-oiled machine.
Certainly does.
And it has its wall of sound.
It does, yeah.
And if and it's funny, I was speaking with another guest quite recently about that, and we both agreed that, like, if you have not gone to see an orchestra or an opera in a beautiful old opera house or concert hall, you, as someone who likes music, you're missing out.
It's very true.
Because just the sound of that, without incredible. Any electrification, without any amplification, is astonishing.
It is astonishing. It's something.
And you're not only missing out, your understanding of music it has a big hole in the middle of it.
I agree. Yeah. I went to see La Traviata in Rome, of all places, on holiday. I'm in Rome. I've got to go to an opera house, and it must have been something like 12 euros, and it was just in an old church, and it was just world-class performance. It was unbelievable.
Yeah, no, you can see why some people get so excited about classical music.
Oh yeah.
I'm not really one of them. Although I enjoy a lot of it.
Yeah.
For what it is. I just find it's like a lot of the really good jazz. It demands for me too much attention.
Sure.
And too much commitment. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
No, but it's it's not that I don't understand it or enjoy it or listen to it, but I can't, I no longer have that time to spend really concentrating on it.
Yeah.
Which is what the good stuff demands.
Are you talking about playing it now?
Oh, even as a listener.
Oh, right. Okay, cool.
You don't listen to John Coltrane like you listen to a pop record.
No.
Because it won't be a pleasurable experience. You won't understand. No, but you won't understand why someone would like it if you don't really listen to it.
Yeah.
But am I wrong?
No.
But that's what I'm saying. And I think that it's important to be honest with yourself, and
Yeah.
But all right, so you've always been sort of completely basted in music your whole life. It's been around you all the time. What instruments outside of the guitar and the clarinet do you play?
Piano is.
Play piano as well. Okay.
I do play piano. That's my first instrument. Is the piano. Okay. I dropped it when I was a teenager to pick up guitar and write emotional, grungy songs, and then took it back up again later on, after I'd had my lost years, and I thought, what the hell am I going to do? I thought, I need to get good at the piano. That was my decision. Okay, and I'm still going.
Yeah, well, it's a commitment. The piano is a major commitment.
Yeah, it is.
because it has to be one of the more difficult instruments to
It
master.
is. It's very hard. It's very hard, but we're on a good journey, and I'm enjoying it. Yes.
Oh, that's good. That's good. So on your first album, and it's Kiss and Tell.
Mm-hmm.
What musicians did you bring in to complement all of your playing?
I first of all had James Ashbury, who was doing guitars.
Okay.
Anything like ukulele or mandolin that might have been on there, he would have done, and he did about half of the bass tracks. And
Okay.
then I got a old friend of mine, Naomi Holmes, to play bass on half the tracks as well. And then the legendary Grant Kershaw was on drums for the whole album.
Oh,
And
nice.
I think that was it. That was
it.
just small band.
Oh no, it's totally fine. And did you end up were they live sessions that you did? Did you try to do that, or was it all overdubbed?
No, it was
Sort of.
Yeah, no, we sent all the demos to Grant, who then recorded his drums along to them, and then we started building from the drums up, re the tracks from there.
Yeah. No, because I noticed in the notes, the sort of producer's notes to the record, that everything was recorded in your home studio except for the drums.
That's right. Yes.
That would have limited your ability to actually play live.
Yeah, no, we couldn't do that, unfortunately. It'd be nice to do a live album.
Yeah,
it's something I'd like to do. But yeah, you need a big old nice room to do that in.
I think it's more a question of just a nice room and someone who knows how to place microphones.
Exactly.
And if you found an engineer who could do that, and some hall anywhere basically that's got good acoustics, you know, and there's a certain charm to that, because in reality, any hit record before 1970, pretty well, outside of maybe some of the Beatles stuff, was all recorded that way.
Yeah, it's a cool
up to like these massive productions, you know, like Phil Spector type things. Those were all live recordings, right?
It's really clever,
which is insane, because there was no overdubbing.
No, you don't get very many chances to get it right. You've got to be hot. You got to be hot on your playing.
Well, and that's why so many of those records were done with the same 50 musicians.
The reliable ones.
Yeah, well, they were the best ones. I mean, they were the ones who could read music.
Yeah,
you know, that was the first thing, like read it fluently.
Yeah.
And then you got some crazy players, like on guitar. Probably the craziest, if you talk to any of the professional like of that period, was Tommy Tedesco, was this guitar player. And there's an insane story, and I'm sure I told it too many times, but it's just too good not to.
Tell it again.
And well, basically, he was in the studio on some recording, and he was part of the Wrecking Crew, which was this legendary group of musicians out of Los Angeles, right, who played on all of the hits in the 60s. And it was on some session, and the producer was looking for trying to find a sound, right, which is oftentimes what it was. So he was down, and they were all in these baffles, as they were, because they were all playing live, right, and they didn't want the sound to bleed over from one player to the other. So he's there in his baffle as the guitarist, and the producer says, "Tommy, give me a mandolin." And Tommy would sort of pick down as if he's picking up an instrument, and pick up, and you could only see like this much of him, right? Sort of thing. And he'd play, and it's like, I don't know, Spanish guitar, and you know, he'd do it, and he'd go over and grab something else, you know, not that. How about, you know? And he went through 4 or 5 of these things, and this is told by one of the other guitarists who could actually see him, right? Because his baffle, like he was in the guitar section. He was all playing this on a guitar.
He wasn't changing.
No, he was just pretending to change instruments, right? Because he could get all of the different sound.
Oh wow!
Out of the one guitar.
That's
the one acoustic guitar play. No, it was insane. That's not impressive. That's insane.
Yeah, it is. It's insane. Yeah.
You know, like to have that level of virtuosity, and also the putting in the hours to know, because he obviously spent hours at home figuring this stuff out, right?
Yeah.
You know, that it doesn't happen by magic.
No.
it's because he was noodling around on his guitar probably 20 hours a day, for the last 40 years type thing.
Yeah, that's
And
amazing.
knew how to get every single ounce or every single note out of it, right?
Yeah,
So,
it's
anyway.
amazing.
No, it is.
Living through your instrument.
Yeah, and a lot of the great musicians, especially a lot of the sessions players, that's what they were all about. And the other funny thing, and it's like a nice connection to your early life, after they finished their sessions, they were all in jazz bands.
Nice.
So they would go out and play in the clubs.
Yeah.
Together.
That's good,
right?
isn't it? What
yeah, I know. And so they were playing all the time. And the thing is, that's how most of them got into the business, because they were in the jazz bands.
Yeah.
They got recruited, because they'd ask the drummer, well, we need a bassist for the session. The normal guy's busy. Who do you know?
Yeah.
And then the guy, and if the guy was reliable, he kept getting calls, right?
Yeah.
And that's how they made the money. But they spent their free time in in all the little jazz bars.
That's
playing, basically improvising, and that's why they were so good too.
Yeah,
because they could do that kind of stuff and then come up with the hooky lines. Because half of that thing, it was done in the studio as they were. Well, I mean, anyone who actually composes music, you easily say, yeah, that's how. You got an idea, you start working on it, you make a mistake, or something comes out differently than you expected, and that's what you end up keeping.
Yeah, a happy
because
mistake.
That's the good part, right? That's it's like, oh, that little hook. It's like, what, and your ear, if you've got an ear that's attuned to it, you're always listening for these things, right?
Yeah, it's quite actually magic when that happens. That's when it goes, something completely different comes out by accident or for whatever reason, and it's just better than what you originally were trying to create. It's good. I like that. That's always good moment.
Well, and that's what keeps me in it.
Yeah.
I mean, no, seriously, that's what I find. If it wasn't happening like that, it'd probably be too boring after a while.
Sure.
There's only so many songs you can write in the same note. You're using the same chord progression, right?
It's true. You should maybe join a trad jazz band.
Oh no, I don't really play anything. I don't really play anything. That's my problem. I could probably fake it as a singer, but that would be about the, and even there I'd have problems. So
I don't think I could play when my dad just threw me in there. And what you need is a couple of months in my dad's band, and life won't be boring at all.
No. Listen, it's not a bad idea. I've decided when I can finally spare the time, I'm going to start learning the guitar. That's my next project. So
very cool.
So, and at that point, it would probably make sense to get into a bad band.
Yeah.
That'd be fun. To actually be playing with other musicians rather than the way I do things at the moment, right? which is although I do collaborate, but the collaborations are all long distance type things.
Oh, okay, yeah.
It's not the same. It's a very much a studio project.
Oh, that's cool though. Oh yeah, you can't beat bouncing off other musicians sort of thing. That's really fun.
Yeah. So you also went through, you mentioned it before, a grunge phase.
Yes.
So why don't we talk about that for a moment?
Well, I mean, I wasn't sort of heavily, there's probably some grunge people who would say, well, do you remember this band? And I'd probably say no. So it was just, what was out there that was readily available, the sort of Pearl Jam and Nirvana and, the obvious ones.
And I'm guessing as well, some of the sort of singers, songwriters, especially the female ones who were coming out during that period.
Shirley Manson, Garbage.
Suzanne Vega.
Suzanne Vega's amazing.
Michelle Shocked.
Don't know.
You don't know her? Oh, you should check her out.
I'll check her out.
Yeah, no, there's her first recording is quite magical.
Okay.
It's called the Campfire Tapes, I think.
I've heard of it. I think I've heard of it.
It's you should. I think you would probably really like it.
I think I
because
probably will.
it's very folky, and
Okay,
it's literally her playing at a campfire,
nice.
and someone with a good quality recorder. Well, the whole thing was probably a setup, but no, but because you don't. Oh, it's like, oh, I just happened to bring this, this studio quality tape recorder along to this
Yeah.
campfire tonight. You know what I mean? But because the recording,
Yeah.
they released it as a record, right? So let's not kid ourselves. It wasn't, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But she,
I'll check it out.
yeah, but check that out. It's her songwriting is so strong, and the
Nice.
performance is really strong, and it's so bare bones because it's just literally her voice, guitar, and the crackle of the fire.
Oh, that's nice. That sounds great.
No, it is.
I'll check it
It's
out tonight.
charming. Yeah, no, it's a charming record.
Fair enough.
Yeah, so you went through that, but obviously the roots of all music go back again to all the stuff that was bubbling around in the 60s. And
Yeah.
you're very much the child of hippies, whether or not your parents would admit it or not. Would that be fair enough to say?
That's fair. That's 100% fair. Yes, indeed. Yes. Yeah. My mum actually was a massive fan of the band. We had the band records when we eventually moved to a house.
Yeah.
So yes, and Joni Mitchell was strong, and I was on a constant voyage of discovering music, all the time, as you are when you're a teenager and young. It was a lot of Beach Boys. They were the first thing I ever got into.
Yeah.
And then, but yes, so yes, as far as the 60s is concerned, pretty much everything I've heard, I've loved. It's all good, isn't it? Some people say that's the best decade ever.
Well, listen, myself, I would say I've learned a lot from it.
Yeah.
Especially the band,
Yeah.
arrangements,
They're amazing.
and songwriting, like the way they approach songwriting,
Mm-hmm.
and the storytelling
Yeah.
that they did in their songwriting, but they were, what can you say when you're blessed with 3 lead singers in a band or 4 lead
Right.
singers in a band, because basically, well, you had Levon Helms, great voice, Robbie Robertson, great voice.
Yeah.
Then what was it? Manuel. I always forget his first name. The guy who played piano, who had probably the sweetest voice. He had a really beautiful voice.
Yeah.
What was his first name? Anyway, and then Danko, their bass player, that had a great voice.
Yeah, they were all very strong.
And it blows your mind.
Yeah. Same with the Eagles. The
Eagles were the same thing, yeah. And then they were a little bit weak, and they wanted to rock it up, so they go and get Joe Walsh. It's just like,
but very strong,
which is insane. Which is insane, because that band that Joe Walsh was in before he went solo, what were they called?
I don't know.
No, they're it's an incredible band, actually.
I'm terrible with names and facts.
No, me too, which is terrible. Luckily, I've got.
You're very impressive with names and facts.
Well, it's because I keep repeating the same ones over and over. But Joe Walsh's band, though, was just absolutely, like, they were the original power trio, and they had the same. I'll look it up. They had the same dynamics as and I'm going to kick myself when I find it. They had the same kind of dynamics that you found with Jimi Hendrix and the Experience.
Okay.
All right, where they literally did not have to be in time to groove.
Yeah.
Right. And it's hard to explain to someone how impressive musically that is, to be so attuned to one another.
Yeah.
That they can do things. It was also why all the musicians just lost their marbles over Jimi Hendrix, right?
Yeah.
Because he was the ultimate musician's musician.
Yeah.
In a weird sense. I'm gonna look this up, Joe.
Yeah, look it up, because that's bothering me.
Yeah, me too. Well, it's good because I've now set things up so I've got two computers so I can actually do live
Oh, that's good.
searches and and correct myself, right? When I get something wrong.
That's
Okay,
good.
so there we go. Let's do it. We'll open up to Joe Walsh. But yes, no, you're totally right with the Eagles though. Because
Yeah.
when especially when they added him into the band, they literally had three or four lead singers,
Yeah.
which is fantastic because then you can choose the best one like the band did for each song. They
For the
basically
song.
they
That's
auditioned
cool.
all the singers for the song, right?
That's really cool. So
Well, it
yeah.
is, and because it what it meant is they could always, and this is my big musical mantra. It's like the song is the thing,
Yeah.
right? It's not the ego. It's not
No, you must honor
performance.
the song.
It's the song. It's the song. It's the song, right?
It
And,
is, yeah.
and in both of those cases with those two bands, the reason why some of those songs are so they're going to be around forever is because that's what they did. It
Yeah.
wasn't the ego that that so and so wrote the song and therefore he has
No,
to sing it.
no.
It became he's got a better voice for the song.
Yeah, that's right.
And and the song was better for it, right?
Yeah, cool.
All right, just let me see.
Very cool. What have you found?
Okay. Oh, the James Gang.
Ah, there we go.
That's the name. And you should look that up too
I was
because
listening to them
they
yesterday.
were heavy. They were a
I was listening.
really heavy 60s band.
Yeah, I was
And
literally
it was
listening to them
hard
yesterday.
rock funk fusion.
Yeah. I think we bought a vinyl of theirs, like literally within a month ago. Within a month.
Okay.
That's ridiculous, but there we go. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, but listen, the good
Yeah.
stuff always floats to the top, right?
It does. It does.
Like cream.
Yeah. Yes. What a time to be alive. But if we were talking about my favorite era, I think going back to some people saying that was the best time in music, I'd have to go to the swing era. I just want to be listening 1940s, 30s, 40s, wartime swing bands. I'd love it.
They were great
Duke
bands.
Ellington,
Some of them, Duke Ellington,
Count Basie.
Count Basie. Yeah, I'm just trying to think who was the clarinet player who was really good. Jack. Oh, geez, I'm so bad on names.
Ed.
Tommy Dorsey.
Tommy Dorsey, yeah. And then
Yeah,
there was
no, but there were a lot of them, and they were all mixed.
Yeah.
A lot of them were mixed and big, but they were big bands. And did you ever get into Western swing?
I don't think I know what that is.
Really?
What's Western swing?
Western swing. All right, look up Bob Wills. It's
Okay.
Wills, but it's pronounced Wills, like not Willis.
I'm right.
And it's Texas Playboys.
Oh, okay.
All right, and there is a really fantastic compilation record of a lot of his stuff.
Okay, cool.
What that was is the sort of Texas shuffle. Texas has always been its own thing musically, right?
Yeah.
And even their country music was different than anywhere else because of the Spanish influences and also just it's Texas, and Texas is its own thing, right? But they got big on big bands in that period were popular everywhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
And musicians, no matter what their background, they were playing just like the Beatles when they started out there playing shuffle music because shuffle music is what got you booked, right?
Yeah.
And so they started this movement, which came to be known as basically Western swing, and it's the instrumentation's different, but it's swing music.
That's cool. I'll check it out.
So it has a lot of country influences.
Nice.
And it has one of the greatest steel lap players.
Oh wow!
And steel lap becomes the main instrument.
Big band still.
It's big bands. Oh yeah, like 12, 13, 14 guys. It's a big band.
That's
and they
cool.
swing.
Nice.
Boy, did they swing. Yeah.
Right. Well, that's two things I've got to listen to tonight. Who was the other one? Michelle
Shocked. Shocked. Yeah, and Michelle just normally. Yes.
Cool.
But yeah, no, check that out. You are gonna, if you're a swing fan, you've discovered a whole new branch of it.
That's
exciting.
Gonna
yeah, no, it is. no, it's. I listen. I was a big fan years and years ago. I had two I was very close to the guitarist in a band that they were sort of a rockabilly band at the
cool.
time. Sort of, it was at the time it was that whole sort of cow punk thing that came out. It was part of the punk music, but they were doing country music and punkifying it.
Yeah.
And there was a really good band out of Montreal where I grew up called Ray Kondo and his Hard Rock Goners, who did this sort of stuff, and it's really good stuff because it's really honky tonk.
Nice.
You know, and it's really, really rootsy, but really like hard. Well, you can see it's where rock and roll came out of. Like that's the other strain of rock and roll, along with the rhythm and blues, right?
Yeah.
Cool. And the other thing though is that the members of the band without the lead singer Ray Kondo had a second project that was called the Crazy Rhythm Daddies. And they were a much smaller unit. I think they were only 4 or 5 guys. So they had a fiddle player, drums, guitar, banjo.
Nice.
And they did a lot of 4-part harmonies and stuff like that. But they did a lot of covers of Western swing stuff.
Nice.
And they were great. It was a great go. It was like one of these shows you'd go to and everyone would dance.
That's exciting.
You know what I mean? And it was, but it was fun.
Yeah.
You know? It was like just fun.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But it was great because it was very traditional, but you got your rebellion out.
Yeah.
With really traditional stuff.
Yeah.
And a higher level of virtuosity.
Yeah.
And different instruments, and it was much more acoustic than, although it was all electrified, but it was all, you know, much more acoustic type music that wasn't dependent on feedback.
This sounds like a whole rabbit hole I'm going to end up going.
Oh yeah, you should go check both of those out too. There's a lot of stuff on. You can find a lot of stuff on both bands on YouTube.
Cool.
Which is nice to but that whole thing. But yeah, you're gonna love it.
I will.
You are gonna love this stuff. If you like swing, like swing, it's swing with different instrumentation.
That's amazing.
And like a country feel. And Bob Wills is he is hilarious. He's like he's like an MC type singer. Cool. And he does a lot of his stuff as sort of toasting almost.
Nice. Oh, this sounds great.
And you can just imagine what it was like in like one of those dance halls with the suspended floors.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You know, like those real ballrooms that they used to play at, you know, all this kind of stuff out where you could actually dance and the floor would bounce if you're dancing.
Yeah.
You know, you can only imagine how wild these nights were, how crazy the crowds went, right?
Amazing, especially in Texas.
Oh yeah, well, but it was throughout the whole West, right? They were really big. Arizona, New Mexico, into Northern California, all that kind of stuff.
Nice.
Yeah.
Exciting.
No, it's good. So that's really interesting. No, that's a fantastic. Well, it also makes sense, like with clarinet, right?
Yeah.
Your early love, because you also had what was his name? Who was the big clarinet player? The white guy. Oh, what was his name? I want to say Jack Benny, but it wasn't Jack. There's something similar.
Benny Goodman.
Benny Goodman. He was really good. That was I really like Benny Goodman.
Yeah, he's good. He's very good. Yeah, my clarinet playing didn't really last past sort of my teenage years, but
really, well, I'm going to challenge you. Play some clarinet on your next record. No, I'm serious, and if you don't want to, you can play some clarinet for one of my records. I'd love to have clarinet on a record.
I've unfortunately pawned my clarinet.
Oh no! Well, I'm sure you can buy it. You can borrow one, you know, from someone, or maybe or maybe like mug some young student as they're leaving the school with a loaner device.
That sounds good. Yeah, I'll do that.
You can probably just like trade it for a 6-pack of beer or something.
Yeah.
You know.
No doubt.
Yeah.
It'd be fun.
So I'm just trying to think as well. What period of Joni Mitchell did you like the best? Because I'm also a big Joni Mitchell fan. I found that she's another one I've learned so much from in terms of songwriting, arranging, and producing to a certain extent. Because you can, once she got into it, you could really hear how much she was taking over productions, no matter who might be nominally the producer on a record.
Right. Okay. I don't think I've listened to everything she's released.
Okay.
First. I had The Hissing of Summer Lawns.
Yeah.
And I had Blue Album, obviously.
Okay.
And then beyond that, it was sort of whatever anyone else was, putting on their playlists. Or so it was just those two albums.
See, you're missing the one between those two albums, which is my favorite one, which is Court and Spark.
I've probably heard it.
Yes. Well, that's the one with a lot of hits. It's Free Man in Paris is on it. There's a lot of. She had 2 or 3 number 1 hits off that one. That's probably the most.
I've probably heard it loads of times.
Yeah. No, that's interesting because those are probably the 3 key records.
Yeah.
Because you have
later on?
What's that?
What happened later on? You say.
What she went farther and farther in the direction of Hissing of Summer Lawns.
Okay.
So and I think her next record after that was Mingus.
Oh yeah.
A really interesting project because actually when I first heard about it, I figured, you can obviously hear a lot of jazz influences in her, in her music. She was always a musical magpie type person.
Yeah.
And I figured, she was very into Charlie Mingus. Yeah. But it turned out it was completely the opposite. He, at the end of his career, wanted to collaborate with her.
Oh.
So that's how the project started. And they did the album. She collaborated with him on the album Mingus, and it was actually, I think, his last recording.
Very cool. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, but what was interesting with that is that from that, and I think it might even be during the sessions that she was doing, she got introduced to all the cream of the crop of the sort of contemporary jazz players. So that when she did her next albums and tours, that was her band.
That's
so
cool.
She literally, her band was Jaco Pastorius on bass.
Nice.
Right? Think about that for a second, right? Probably the greatest bassist of the 20th century, or one of them, definitely, in the conversation. What was his name? I'm just trying to think. Anyway, that whole sort of Weather Report group of musicians, that was her backing band when she was doing the jazz stuff.
That's nice.
But that tells you how much respect they had for Joni Mitchell, right?
Yeah.
Because these musicians, like Pat Metheny was her guitarist.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah.
No, it's insane, and the music, like, I'm trying to think of the record. There's a concert. There's footage from a tour they did promoting one of her later albums with that band.
Wow.
And it's incredible. it's really incredible, right? Because it's like broke the boundaries. It's very improvisational pop, sort of jazz pop music. But she carries it off because Joni Mitchell had such chops and such, good musical instinct, right? So I find a lot of the time with that, the musicianship it outpaces the compositional skills.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's probably a very diplomatic way of saying that. It's just like, wow, there's all so many great players, but the songs are shit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's no hooks. There's nothing to grasp on. There's nothing you're humming 2 minutes later.
No, that's right.
Whereas with her, it was a really nice balance of the two.
Yes. Yeah.
Because she had such good, like, her musical instincts were just incredible, and her songwriting was just, and then that voice and the way she played, and the fact that she had polio as a child, so she had to learn.
Did she?
Yeah. She was a polio kid.
Oh no.
There's a surprising number of them that became very famous in different genres. Another one, I think, who was it? Martin Scorsese,
Really?
polio or something like that. Yeah. Well, it's always the same story. They had a serious illness as a child and were forced to miss a year of school. Type thing, right? And it was before the internet and before video games and before whatever. Yeah. So in their boredom,
they get good.
They got good at something.
Yeah.
You know, in her case, I think she learned it was the mandolin first that she learned. And that was her
Okay.
first instrument. And
Okay.
so, or no, the dulcimer.
Oh.
But because of that, it affected her idea about how chords worked and how strumming worked, and also explained all those weird, because she was really well known for weird tunings,
Yeah.
right? But that also had to do with what she could actually play because of she had problems with her hands, right? Like she couldn't form, like I don't know if it was, I'm not sure if it was that she didn't have the strength or didn't have the dexterity. But there's
Okay.
certain things that were easier for her to do if she played around a lot more
Certain
with
way.
the tuning.
That's interesting.
And that's what led to all that those crazy, wonderful, immediate, you hear the first note and you know it's Joni Mitchell songs, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
because she's not, it doesn't sound like everything else.
It doesn't. Her melodies are more interesting than a lot of people. It's yeah, she's amazing. I think she's doing some shows again recently after a bad. I'm sure I saw something.
No, she was
had a
very
bad,
sick. Well, I think she's got cancer, if I'm not, because she smokes like a chimney, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm wondering how good her voice is at this moment, because I was speaking to someone recently and I was a bit jealous. They ended up seeing Roxy Music went back on tour, and it's most of the original members, well, aside from Eno, obviously. And I'm a big Roxy Music fan. So,
Nice.
you know, I would have liked to, but the one thing they said is, yeah, but Brian Ferry's lost his voice.
Oh, that's a shame.
Yeah, I knew that because I saw him for like a New Year's concert 10 years ago, and he'd lost his voice then.
Oh no.
When he was doing what he was actually interesting. He was doing a lot of sort of Dixieland early sort of crooner music. He did a whole record of it. It's actually really good.
Sounds good.
You should look at but there's a couple of songs that are really good.
Nice.
You know, complete. But he was in the position where he has the money and the connections. He can get the right musicians in the studio who, you know, share the vision. Yeah. And he was always very much, you know, vision full in, you know, do what you know what I mean? As opposed to just sort of play around with it and add a few, you know what I mean? Add a banjo and call it country.
Yeah. No, it goes in deep.
Yeah. No, which is wonderful. So just let me think. So, who of your influences haven't we talked about? That you think would be a big one that your fans and that the kids should know about?
I mean, I guess the songwriters. Well, Joan Armatrading. Are you familiar with Joan Armatrading? I love her, but again, I don't think I've heard the entire of her back catalogue. You know, you get hooked on like a few records, and then other stuff you get other stuff. But I probably do own nearly every record on vinyl by her. So Joan Armatrading is a big influence. Alanis Morissette was a big influence. You know, I listened to her day in day out for a long time.
Yeah, that first record,
The Jagged Little Pill, and
that was a good record. That was a really good record.
It's brilliant. And the one that came after it was also very good. Can't remember the name at the moment. But yeah, her follow-up record was very good. And then it's been so many. But yeah, you know, all the fierce females. Suzanne Vega was a big influence. Skunk Anansie. I don't know if you know of them. Skunk Anansie were a big influence. They're heavy side of things. They're kind of rock.
Yeah. So did you go as extreme as PJ Harvey?
I like PJ Harvey. Yeah, I like PJ Harvey a lot. Yeah, she's cool. Very cool. Yeah. I like.
Oh,
PJ.
she's got chops.
Yeah,
she's definitely got chops.
She knows what she's doing.
Oh yeah.
Also, she's definitely got chops. Also, what's her name? She did the Criminal song. Fiona Apple was good. Good as well.
Yeah.
So all across the sort of spectrum of girls.
Yeah, well, listen, it makes it listen, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
In the sense, like, just completely on a professional level as a musician, that's
Mm.
obviously the niche where there's a market, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you're going to have any success, you should at least be well aware of it.
Sure. Yeah.
Uh, Plus, I think that there's a lot of things that would be attractive to sort of a young, rebellious teenage, post-teenage girl, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah, for
that's
sure.
the target audience for the music.
Yeah,
You know,
definitely. Well, it works.
just
It works.
like all the pimply 13-year-old boys and either Kiss or then Iron Maiden.
Yeah,
No, but
yeah,
seriously, it's not shocking that the audience is 99.9%. You know what I mean? Within a
yeah.
certain little
Yeah.
demographic.
No, that's right.
You know?
I used to love, most within reason of what was on the radio in back in those days.
Yeah.
Like when Coolio dropped Gangsta's Paradise, I was like, oh my god, this is amazing. And that's kind of how I got into a little bit of a hip hop phase. But again,
Yeah.
like mostly just the mainstream stuff that was out there. I'm quite mainstream. I mean,
Yeah.
my songs are quite poppy. I like.
Yeah. No,
to.
I would say that you're very much within the sort of singer-songwriter, uh, you know, that has been sort of marketed for pop.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
like
I could go
when it
pop song,
translates from you just strumming on the guitar to actually doing a record with a band, it falls very much into that style, which is totally fine. I mean, that's,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
you
No,
you
it
you you
is.
inhabit it well,
Thank you.
as it were, right? You wear it well.
There we go.
So, it's no, but it's, it's good, and you've got a good voice. You're very strong on the songwriting, which is great.
Thanks.
Now, have you done much in terms of pushing genres? Because I know you also said that Bob Marley was a big influence growing up.
Yeah.
Has that sort of come into the music at all? Have you done any sort of bad reggae songs or?
No, I haven't. No. Thankfully, I never have.
Very few bands can pull that off. Like there's like I can think of really literally like 10cc. We're about the only one who were able to really pull off reggae
Yeah. Oh,
as a
yeah. No,
all white unit. You know what I mean? Or actually, no, that's not true because the Tom Tom, what was it called? The band that was the bassist and the guitarist from Talking Heads, the Tom Tom Club.
Oh, okay.
They actually pulled it off as well.
They managed to pull it off. Yeah, no, that's something.
Yeah, with
wouldn't-
what's it, Wordy
yeah.
Rapping Hood. I don't know if you've ever heard that. So it's a great song, actually.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I haven't gone down that route. I think it just kind of opened my eyes to the struggle of Black people. An early age, which I was grateful for. Same with rap. Once I started listening to rap, I was like, okay.
Yeah.
It's not documented. It's not taught over here or anything really much. So yeah, it was. I kind of the lyric. I very much got into the lyrical side and trying to understand the story. The stories that were being told there.
Yeah, no, well, and listen, especially like with Bob Marley or a lot of that the early sort of reggae music, there's also a direct link to the sort of 50s folk protest in a weird sort of way.
Yeah.
I think that they were listening to that stuff,
right,
and it translated into reggae, and they had a beat, they added a beat to it because it was unavoidable.
Yeah.
Or probably more even inconceivable not to.
Yeah.
And with rap, it also is in a sense, because it's protest music, right?
Exactly. And sometimes you can just enjoy it and party, but other times you sit down and listen to it and you think, oh, this is actually you just have you actually listen properly to it and experience it in a different way. But
and with Bob Marley, like some of those songs that have come out, because they basically tried to, I think everything he's ever recorded has been released at this point. Some of the more acoustic stuff or just him accompanied on guitar, that's folk music.
Yeah.
It's folk music. It's
Yes,
it
it
may
is.
be Jamaican folk music, but it's folk music.
Well,
You know,
that's it.
good. It's very good folk music. It's much
It's very
better than
good.
a lot of the the folk music outside of Bob Dylan, because a lot of it I found because he was a great songwriter,
he was a great songwriter.
and also like the ultimate magpie.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have.
But just speaking of that and completely off the subject because it just jumped in my mind. Did you know that David Bowie, when he was starting his career, because he started sort of as a songwriter, right? He was one of those types who started early and wanted to be a star, right? By, hook or crook.
Yeah.
And he was asked to write the lyrics for the song that became My Way.
No way. That's cool.
And there's a version of it somewhere because he wasn't chosen, right? It was rejected, and it became I think Neil Sedaka who wrote it. Anyway, I can't remember who wrote the song for Frank Sinatra, but his version with him singing it it's floating around somewhere online.
That's amazing.
It's weird to hear because it's that melody, right?
What's no way.
Yeah.
Asking, was it the same melody? Yeah.
It's this
cool.
no. Well, they basically got a tape of the like a demo of the song, right? And they were to write lyrics to it. And someone kept the demo that he made to send back, I guess, or it was someone found it in an archive, realized what it was, and said, "Holy God, white label." There's a whole market who'll buy this thing.
Yeah.
And so it's out somewhere, and it's quite interesting.
That's cool. I'd like to hear it.
Excellent. No, it's good. And so you have another album coming out. When is that expected to drop?
It's just dropped actually. It's an EP called Game of Chess. Yeah, so it's
Game of Chess. And when was it released? So just
last
recently.
Friday.
Well, perfect timing then.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Great. I can't wait to listen to it.
Yes. It's 4 tracks. We haven't done the sort of we've kind of chosen 4 what we call strong songs rather than just one strong song and then some the weaklings. So it's kind of it's a we've had some good feedback from it, so we're proud of it. When I say we, I mean me and James. James is who does most of the work actually.
So is James the producer, or is he co-writer, arranger? Like what's the?
I mean, a bit of everything. I definitely do the majority of the writing, but he does have the odd cracking idea. So and then he's recorded everything and mixed it and mastered it. So yeah. So it's a very in-house project, but have a listen. Yeah.
no, definitely. No, I totally will. And does James, does he play instruments as well, or is he just behind the desk?
He's played bass and guitar, mandolin. Actually,
so that was the same player from the first.
The same James.
Okay,
good. Yeah. He's got some quite nice solos on this record actually.
Oh, nice. Well, that's
got some. We're keeping the guitar solos going.
No. Listen, I've got an album coming out at some point, and I think almost every song on it has a guitar solo.
That's what I like to hear.
I'm collaborating with a guitarist who does really good solos, and it's
great, fantastic.
Why not, right?
Yeah, why not? You can't beat a good guitar solo.
No, not when it's a good one. It allows you to, rather than when I first started out, it was all right. Most of my songs were under 3 minutes.
Right.
With a good guitar solo, you can get it up to almost 4 minutes.
It's true, yeah.
you have another verse, right? You get to have another verse without it being exactly the same, or because I rarely do story songs.
Oh, okay. What sort of songs do you do?
Oh, just all kind. I do whatever happens.
Whatever happens.
I tend to throw something down. I'm very much spaghetti on the wall. Whatever
Nice.
sticks is what I start with, and then I let the song dictate what's going to happen.
That's
And
good.
I tend to look for the parts that aren't working, and
Hmm.
that's where I put all my effort, because I found that that's usually where the hook is. You
Ah,
know,
that's good.
that's
Good
it's
system.
it's usually what doesn't work. If you can get it working, then you know you've got something, right?
Yeah, yeah.
If
True.
that makes
True.
sense.
Does. Yeah.
You know, if you're looking to make lemonade, you got to go where the lemons are.
It's
Right?
true.
You don't look
Head
for
for the
lemonade.
lemons.
You don't look for lemonade somewhere where there's no lemons.
It's true.
Nah,
That's
it's
true. Got to get down the fruit aisle.
exactly. Anyway, we passed an hour,
Oh,
so
wow.
we're near the time limit. And I always ask everyone one last question, and
Okay.
in your case, I'm sure it's going to be a very interesting answer.
Hmm.
So, what was the first record, CD, or tape that you purchased with your own money?
It's a good one. I purchased a Beach Boys tape, um, and I don't think it was a authentic release, if you know what I mean. I think it was one of those compilations. It wasn't. It had a lot of the songs off Pet Sounds, but it also had other songs.
Okay.
And I can't for the it was probably just called The Best of the Beach Boys, but then a lot of them came out, right? So
Yeah, it
um,
was probably
and
one of 75 best of Beach Boys.
yeah.
But listen, you were lucky. They actually had licensed a lot of the songs from Pet Sounds,
Yeah,
which is a fantastic record.
it's a fantastic record. It certainly is.
Yeah.
And I mean, yeah, that's kind of groundbreaking in a way.
Oh yeah. The Beatles thought so.
Right. Good. I'm glad.
What you know that whole story, don't you?
Well, they were what that they were. No, well, I don't
Well,
know.
no,
No.
no. What had happened is when the Beatles finally got back into the studio, right after Help, they'd had some time off for the first time in their career,
Yeah.
and the record that came out of that was Rubber Soul,
Oh,
which is probably my favorite Beatles record.
nice.
Definitely up there. That one or
Yeah.
Revolver, the two that I really like the most.
Yeah.
And Brian Wilson heard that, and it blew his mind, right? Because the Beach Boys were basically in that same uh, phase as the Beatles were, right? It was
Yeah.
pop music. And I'll take one step back too. The Beatles, when they took their time off, they met with Bob Dylan, and he
Yeah.
got them stoned, right?
Good lad.
And that led to Rubber Soul and a lot more experimentation, and playing with different instruments and more textured sound. And by then I think they were 4-track recording. You could do multi-track tracking,
Yeah.
in the studio. And so they did Rubber Soul, and then he heard Rubber Soul and it freaked him out, and he got busy, and the result was Pet Sounds.
Yeah.
And then the Beatles heard Pet Sounds and freaked out and got really busy, and the result was Sergeant Pepper.
Amazing. I
Right?
love that. Amazing.
So
I love to think of them
that's the whole
sweating.
those three albums are all very closely related, and it's all because of Bob Dylan.
Yeah. Oh, there we go. That's that's cool. So yeah, I had this Beach Boys tape that I played round and round and round. I knew every harmony, all of them. I would go through the whole tape, sing all the lead parts, go through the whole tape, take the highest harmony, learn. That's probably a very huge part of my music education. The amount of time.
Listen, and you talk to a lot of them, and they got their big musical, like for a lot of them, it was all the doo-wop stuff, right?
Yes.
That's where Brian Wilson got all of the ideas for all of those fantastic harmonies.
Yeah, they're outrageously good.
Yeah.
I do have a big love for the Ink Spots from
that
a very
was, and I think the Ink Spots were his, like that was his Beatles when he was. Yeah.
I don't think I even ever knew that one of them, that he was a fan of them. I think I found them and I was like, yes. Yeah, love them. So
yeah, he was a massive fan. I think he was even that to the level of president of the fan club type.
Yeah.
But
that makes sense.
yeah, well, it does, and it's interesting. Just as a last final thought, you said you have some siblings, right? You've got some sisters.
I do. Yes.
Okay. Well, one thing to consider, and part of the reason why the Beach Boys harmonies were so good,
was because
they were all brothers and cousins.
Yes, you do get that.
And the best harmonies are mostly familial ones.
Sure. Well, I have sung with my sister a lot, and we people always say it's a sister thing. That's why it sounds, like it sounds. So yeah, I think you're right there.
It's a little bit more. I think that the vocal cords are very close. I think that even on a very physical level, the genetics shine through.
Sure. Yeah, it's interesting.
In the same sense as my dad was a singer, and he had a wonderful voice, like really well trained from being sort of a choir boy, up through in like quite a popular 60s band that had the standard story. They got some success. The manager ran away with all the money. The classic. It's like every story from the 60s is pretty well the same, right?
Horrible.
But he played music throughout his life, but he had a totally fantastic voice. And while mine, I'm much less disciplined, and I didn't, I don't have his chops. I definitely have his voice.
Oh.
So,
Oh, that's cool.
And I realized, like for me, the biggest thing lately I've noticed, well, not noticed, I've discovered that I've got a really kick-ass falsetto too.
Oh, that's impressive. That's good.
I never knew. It was one of those things, and it just it started. You know how these things discover themselves, right?
Yes.
Especially when you're writing music, and at least with myself, I tend to I don't prejudge things when I'm doing them. Yeah, I'll do them and then judge them.
That's good. Yeah. Yes. I always imagine how does a guy discover his falsetto?
You know what? It was one of the funniest things. I ended up because I do a lot of my stuff alone. I was searching around to find background vocals for songs. And you experiment around and you try different things.
Yeah.
And that one I just slipped into, and I found it wasn't a strain to do where you think it should be. Oh, it's going to really strain your voice, and your voice is going to, you're going to lose your voice quickly.
Yeah.
None of that. I could do it all night long. It wouldn't. Yeah. Well, it's just, I can hit that pitch. You know what I mean? It's a natural thing.
Yeah.
I guess that's the best way to put it, right?
Yeah.
And I've been leaning more and more into it as I get more confidence in it. And I've got a couple of songs where it's like, well, that's the hook. You know what I mean? Because I can do a full on sort of Jimmy Somerville.
Yeah.
I can, hit it. But really one of the biggest things is I ended up, was experimenting around with effects, when I was working on a record. And I'd just gotten I'd gotten the whole sort of Ozone suite, of things, and I had Nectar, and I'm playing around with it. And I don't know about you, but when I sing, I like singing to effects.
Okay.
I like hearing the effects in my voice when I'm singing, and then I'll lean into it.
That's nice. Yeah.
Play around with it, and I was doing that, and I had this crazy effect with really long delays and all kinds of echo and God knows what. And I started doing a falsetto in that. Playing with it, where you play with the fact that there's a delay. So you're singing to get the delay and to emphasize the delay and make the delay even more, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it was like, holy cow. This sounds great. And so I stopped, and I basically then wrote a song around it. Around the vocal part that I did with nonsense words. There was no even, you know what I mean? Because you can do it if you're sustaining something out, you can use one word and have it last for 45 seconds.
That's true, yeah.
And it's like, and I totally leaned into that, right? So You know,
Oh, that's
but
great.
that's half the fun.
Well, it is fun. It's got to be fun.
If it's not fun, it's work, right?
Exactly. Who likes work?
Anyway, thank you so much. It's been
Oh,
an absolute pleasure meeting with
thank
you.
you.
Good luck with the new record.
Thank you very
I
much.
hope you have lots of success with it. And
Oh,
if you do, I'll have you back on, and then
yeah,
you know,
we'll chat about
you
that.
can share some of that. You can share some of that success.
Sure thing. Yeah.
Anyway, stay online, and we'll say our goodbyes.
All
And
right.
to everyone else, I'm just God. There we go. I'll say this for about the 20th time. With the current setup I have, I don't have a mouse, so I'm
Oh,
using my pad, right?
oh, okay.
Which is adventurous. So I've got to end up buying sort of some more USB plugins, because between my camera, my lighting, my
It's a lot.
microphone, you know, it's just like I had to give up on something. What do you give up on? Well, I guess it's the mouse, right?
Oh,
Yeah. But the problem is, of course, it's almost impossible to navigate around, especially
sure.
with two screens.
It sounds like a nightmare to me.
Fun times. Well, I'm getting better at it, and whatever. And by this point, no one's listening anyway, right?
There we
Anyway,
All right, good stuff.
stay on, and we'll say our goodbyes. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Please subscribe, like, comment, do all the same stuff, and let's keep this party going. Talk to you
Let's
soon.
do it.
Bye-bye.